So we'll pause for just a moment of silence. We give thanks to the Lord at all times, including at this time of this pandemic which has struck our human family. And we pray that this experience may enable us to come together in the spirit of Fratelli Tutti, to come together to search not just for solutions, but to search for better ways to connect as a human family, to create bonds as a human family. We make this prayer to Christ our Lord. My dear friends, welcome to this ACPI webinar hosted by the younger members of our association, Association of Christian Philosophers of India. As you know, we were not able to hold our regular research seminar last October. And we hope, but we cannot be certain, that we will be hosting our annual seminar this coming October in Mumbai, in St. Pius College, St. Pius X College. However, the lockdown period has provided us with the means to connect virtually, and we are taking advantage of this resource to connect together as a philosophical family this evening. The pandemic has taught us that we are extremely interconnected as a human family, and beyond that, as a family of those gifted with various life forms. We have probably got this disease from another life form. It is fitting that the Holy Father has come out with a social encyclical named Fratelli Tutti, which invites us to overcome various borders and boundaries, to work together towards the common good, and more importantly, to form bonds as a human family. I am extremely grateful that the young members of the ACPI are organizing this webinar. And I'm also grateful that we have got eminent speakers from across the country who were willing to share their insights and inspirational thoughts with us by way of philosophical reflections on this important encyclical. We look forward to an enlightening interaction. All the best. Thanks to all those who have put this together. God bless.
Thank you, Father Keith. Thank you, Father Keith. So before we start with the first speaker, that is Father Victor Ferrao, just a few sets of instructions. Maybe we will put all our mics or the microphones in the mute mode except the speaker. The second, probably an instruction will be, we will have three speakers speaking, one after the other, and then we would have a time of 30 minutes for questions, discussions. You could send the questions either to, or not to either, to Santan Fernandez. He's one of the co-hosts, and he will be the moderator for the session, the question answer session. So you could either send the questions directly to him, or you could just send a message that you would like to ask a question, so that we would not have confusion who has to ask the question. So he would manage or moderate that session. And our first session, we have with us Father Victor Ferrao. I'm sure for the people who are associated with ACPI, Father Victor Ferrao is a much familiar face. Father Victor Ferrao is the Dean of Philosophy and teaches at Prashal Seminary at Goa. He has done his PhD from JDV Pune in Philosophy of Science, and he's a priest of the Archdiocese of Goa. He writes extensively on social political scenario, and when I remember his name, he's one person you can give any topic and he can speak on it intellectually, clearly, and with beauty. He reads and writes extensively, and today he would speak on the topic, let's row our common boat with an oar of fraternity. Over to you, Father Victor.
Thank you, Arun. Simon, I'm quite very excited and happy about this seminar that we are having, a webinar about being connected to each other. And the image that the Pope has given us is the image of a common boat that we need to row we are all in a common boat. And this idea of common boat tells us that we are also having great possibilities for good as well as for bad. And therefore, these possibilities for good has to be multiplied. Our potentials to increase the goodness in the world needs to come and be linked with one another, so that that's how we can make this world a better place for all of us. And so the Pope in this Fratelli Tutti promotes the dignity of every human person, men and women, and bases it on being children of God. So we all are children of God, and therefore we have this dignity, and we can flourish together, not alone. We can flourish together, or we can perish together if some of us decide to isolate, disunite, fight, hate in different ways. So therefore, our Pope knocks at our doors at the right time to bring us together. As you know, the world today is becoming more and more closed, using his words, dark clouds around the world. As he begins his encyclical, he talks about this closed world. So I have divided my presentation into three parts. The closed world, that's what Pope has been talking about. New paths of hope to lead to an open world, and the philosophical roots of Fratelli Tutti. Now, I will spend less time on the first two parts. That is, in a way, trying to give us what the Pope is saying. But where are the roots of his doctrine? Certainly from philosophy, not from the Bible. That will leave for the theologians. We are talking as philosophers, so we will take philosophical roots of this encyclical. Okay, so let me begin with the closed world. Pope tells us today that people are looking forward. Of course, we have a lot to look forward, but we have lost sense of history. We are only looking towards future, and we want to build everything from the 0 point by focusing on the future, and we have lost lessons from the past. So history is dead. We have a deconstructed mind. That's the first point. The second point he is bringing to our notice is no plan for everyone. We are living in very isolated type of lives. Sometimes you can see extreme polarization has become a political tool. The other is seen only as a rival, not as a brother. And so therefore, we are here, brother or sister, we are here to eliminate the other. And that's where there's no plan for everyone. That's all. The world is getting more and more divided. Within this, there is a throwaway world, he says. Humans have become disposable, sacrificable for the sake of others. There are few elite human beings. Because of them, others can be disposed, killed, eliminated. So this is where we are into a throwaway world. Insufficiently, then he talks about insufficiently universal human rights. In fact, the human in the human rights is always a questionable position. That what we define human, then we'll decide what will be the rights. So therefore, the Pope is also telling us, like, the human rights are not universal, not equal for all. The practice of human rights is not equal for all. Conflict and fear is all around us. Violence and terror, racial and religious persecutions have become tools for economic interest. We might see that in our country, and the Pope is pointing it to us that they are tools. This persecution can be tools for economic interest. Globalization and progress without a shared roadmap. What is happening is, through globalization, the Pope is saying we have globalized indifference. Can I go to the next one? Pandemic and superfluous certainties of our daily life. In fact, we were having very normal life. We were certain about many things in life. Today, we are not really certain whether I will be going to the market and I will not become sick. So, in that sense, pandemic and superfluous certainties of our life are calling to question by pandemic. We are in a same boat, all of us. We belong to each other. Pandemic is telling us that we belong to each other. To save myself, I must save the other. There's no other way to save. The rich has to save the poor. Otherwise, one day the virus will come to the rich. And so we are in the same boat. God has somehow brought us together to a new level of consciousness that interdependent and shared responsibility for each other has become very, very important today. Absence of human dignity on the borders. Pope is very concerned, as we know, about the migrant and the migrant crisis that we have in different places in the world, particularly on the borders. Illusion of communication. We think that we are communicating through mobiles, through a lot of other means like now we do. But actually, mobile communication is thought as the next best thing, but the next best thing is not the first thing. It is still the next best thing. It would be best if we could meet together in Mumbai or somewhere. And now I would have spoken. I can't see many of you face to face, and I have to believe that you are watching me, listening to me. The world has become a spectacle. In fact, all of us want to watch. And so that is what the communication media has brought in. The Pope is trying to question the way we are right now. Shameless aggression has come because you can see that because on social networks, platforms, social media network platforms, we can abuse people. We can say things which we otherwise would not have said. And we can say it with impunity. We see that a lot of people abuse each other and troll each other, and we have become shameless in this aggression. This is the closed world that we are in. Information without wisdom. We have a lot of information today, and we have lost, in fact, the ability of silent listening is replaced by frenzy and texting, trolling. You can see all this is going on, and we can pour into violence, as we saw in India, forms of subjection and self-contempt, contempt, copying others and consuming instead of being creative. This is what Pope is trying to tell us, that we are copying others and we are consuming too much in today's world, and we have lost our original. We have become copies. That means I want to be the other, not myself. So this is the situation of this closed world. But we are not closed in a sense. We don't have hope. We do have. In the dark clouds, still there is light coming to us. And hope tells us God continues to sow seeds of goodness in humanity. And you can see that very much in the pandemic. We can see a lot of goodness in human beings. Many have put their life on the line for others. Hope is bold and takes us beyond personal convenience, petty securities, and compensations that limit our horizons. Pope Francis meditates on the parable of Good Samaritan, the stranger on the road, to encourage us to see Jesus in every stranger, neighbor, or the other. So we have a challenge to open this closed world, open an universal horizon. So we have to move from atomist self, the Cartesian. If you ask me to become philosopher right now, it's Cartesian. I think, therefore I am, which has become I buy, therefore I am. I enjoy, therefore I am. We need to move away from this atomist self. Embrace ever open love so that we strive for open societies that integrate everyone. Love integrates and unites. That's what the Pope is saying. To move beyond the world of associates, only friends, comfort zone, only few people. Like, we have to move beyond that. Embrace the nobody or the marginalized in our society. People are nobodified every day. People are rendered nobody, and they do not count. But we need to open ourselves to them. Promote moral good, solidarity, and social role of property. Stand for human rights without borders through international networks. Be open to global as well as local, starting with our own region. Promote political love that recognizes all humans as brothers and sisters. Social and political charity is for the needy, the poor, the helpless. Overcome monologues through social dialogue, encounter leading to a new culture of kindness that frees us from cruelties and anxieties of consumerism, embrace paths to encounter that starts with the truth. Embrace paths which begin to start with the truth. We do not have to return to the previous time, a time prior to the conflict. We can start with truth. We have a disrupted history in India, in Goa too. We don't have to start from ground zero, break the Babri Masjid, and then start. We start from the truth. We know the truth, and from there we can start. That is a beautiful idea given to us by the Pope. Build the architecture of peace, not on monadic uniformity for all, but on an ecosystem of working together. Begin with the least, the powerless. Forgive, but don't forget the lessons that you learned. Let religion be at the service of fraternity. Adopt a culture of dialogue as part of mutual cooperation and reciprocal understanding. Now, this is what the Pope is saying in summary. That's what I felt. And now I'm moving into my reflections on from where the underpinnings or the basis or the roots of Fratelli Tutti arrives and take us to this point. So Pope Francis shuns aside, as I told you, the narcissistic, atomist, Cartesian self. I think, therefore, I am of modernity. And you see, you can say that I have faith, therefore I am. You have it in Luther, sola fide. And now, Pope is trying to embrace intersubjectivity, intersubjective I, thou, interrelated self of the existentialist that finds a profound echo in a Bible which teaches us that we are all children of God. So we are all, by nature, interbeings, interconnected, interrelated, interdependent. We can also find a spirit of responsibility for the other that we have in the phenomenological work of Levinas. Levinas teaches us that we cannot erase the other. There is an ethical imperative of the other, especially the beggar, the poor, the suffering other. The other summons us into being. I become myself through my response to the other. This means one becomes a self for the other. Myself is totally dependent on the other. So the other calls me into being, and my response creates me what I am. The Pope rejects, as we know, extreme liberalism, a libertine thinking that talks about the individualist, extreme reductive thinking that self is the be all and end all of all society. Freedom is ultimate, making an individual self, and extreme individualism is being celebrated. Extreme individualism is against human nature. Humans are social beings. We are interbeings. At the same time, Pope rejects excesses of communitarianism. Doesn't mean that if I am not individual, I have to be communitarian completely. No, communitarianism can also crush the individual under the weight of loyalty to the community. Today, we think communitarian politics is reigning in India. You are disloyal, therefore destroying. A kind of communitarianism is forced on us. And if you notice that, loyalty versus freedom is our problem. I'm not free to be a Catholic. I'm not free to be a Christian or a priest. I have to be loyal to a certain tradition and certain culture and certain way of being Indian. So that's where we are also struggling. So Pope Francis rejects the excesses of communitarianism and crushes the individual. Such a position is totalitarian, as we know. In communism and other types of isms, we have seen this. Pope Francis finds the middle between extreme liberalism and extreme communitarianism. So it is not that he is for individualism, not for ultra communitarianism. He is somewhere in the middle, that the individual is interrelated and without borders. Pope Francis also shuns aside closed populism. Closed populism is, we can see that today in India, what we are finding is working populism is a leader which is claiming that very popular, people are with him, and unfortunately, such a populism which is closed, in the words of the Pope, that promotes not the interest of the poor, but the interest of the elite, and calls us to open social and political charity, which is open to the needy, the poor, and really suffering. So now, with this, what I was saying, there are this under basis of this philosophy, the philosophy of existentialism, of interconnected, intersubjective, and responsibility, ethical responsibility, as well as somewhere in the middle between the two. The two is communitarian and liberalism. Okay, so now let us come to some kind of conclusion. The Pope combines the principle of common good, therefore it is communitarian in some sense, as well as the principle of subsidiarity, which gives individual, the lowest person, the space within the community, so that both the individual as well as the community are both integrated in a quest for a borderless fraternity. To actualize borderless fraternity, we have to accept our interdependence and shared responsibility. Philosophically, it is what Martin Heidegger calls the das Ding of humanity, our finitude. We have forgotten this finitude, that we have become godlike. We have become, we think our reason is taking us forward, science is taking us forward, and so the das Ding, the real thing of being human is being finite. That is our finitude, our brokenness. This is humbling. So Pope is calling us to become more and more rooted, grounded, and accepting of finitude, as well as leave what Heidegger would call mid-sane, be with the other, with a collective responsibility through a global order of friendship, but not one championed by neoliberalism, constricted exclusive narrow nationalism, but through social friendship. So we need to promote social friendship without borders, but we can see global, what we call neoliberalism, also promotes trade without borders, but that is not what we are talking about, nor nationalism, which is narrow and very constricted. This is why we cannot instrumentalize reason, faith, culture, and tradition. Religion is at the service of fraternity, and so we can also be pastorally opportunists in some way when we instrumentalize faith. That because that will serve neoliberal goals, and therefore we must scrutinize both our means and ends, not just ends. We must also scrutinize our means. We must have good means and good ends. Thank you.
Thank you, Father Victor, for the wonderful presentation. I'm not going to summarize the presentation. So I hope there was a small complaint that the volume was low. I hope Sister Ananda will look into it a little bit when she speaks. Okay, it was okay for me. I think it was a little bit problem for some people because there was a comment there. The second speaker for the day is Dr. Sister Ananda Amritmahal. She is the principal of Sapphires College, Mumbai, a religious belonging to the congregation Religious of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. She has a doctoral thesis, a feminist critical perspective of the work of Shashi Deshpande and Mahaswara Devi from IIT Bombay. She has worked quite a lot in the epistemological and methodological foundations of women's studies, on feminist readings of myth, scripture, and different aspects connected to that. Sometimes I take the girls out for a play after their hostel deadline, and when their parents find out, they can never believe that as the principal I took them out. But that is the way of life here. Uh, Over to you, sister.
Thank you so much. And thank you all of you for inviting me here. I feel I'm here a little bit under false pretexts because, as Arun pointed out, my discipline is literature. And so I'm not going to give you strong philosophical ideas and underpinnings of the entire document that we're looking at today. My students always say, Sister Ananda, means there'll be stories. So I'm going to start with a story. This goes back to when I was a little girl, and I grew up in a Hindu home. So, good Hindu family, you were being brought up as a good girl, you're going to go and get married and go into your in-laws' house and all this kind of stuff. I'm 6 years old. But already by that time, you're told very strictly about, laws of jhuta and non-jhuta, the food that you eat, how you mustn't touch other people's food, etc., all that. And in the community in which I grew up, it was a very strict set of rules about it. And then I'm about 6 or 7, and we went one Sunday to spend the day with a colleague of my parents and his family. I was an only child at that time, and there was this battalion of like 9 children they had. So it was very fun. The whole morning we played and played and played and played, and it was lovely. And then it was lunchtime, and this was a Punjabi family. So in a Punjabi family, you had this, all the children sat around this nice big thali from which everybody was to eat. And as a guest, they were inviting me into their family, as it were. And so I was also supposed to eat out of that big thali. Except that I had grown up in a, in a world where you're not supposed to eat in anybody else's thali except your own immediate family. And why should I be? How can I be eating out of this big thali that everybody? And I remember crying so bitterly and trying to tell my mommy, but you must, but why can't I eat like you and daddy are eating in separate plates? Why can't I have a separate plate? And my parents, of course, very wise, but and also very gracious, refused to listen to me at all and insisted that, listen, you will eat with them. That's it, finished, full stop. There's no. It was such a turmoil inside of me. Why am I telling this story? I'm supposed to be talking today about interculturality and the way in which that fits into this whole idea of Fratelli Tutti. And the whole point of Fratelli Tutti is that when you look at the world as your brother and sister, these divisive, boundaries and barricades that we put up around ourselves to protect ourselves, to safeguard our personal spaces, etc., they melt. Because between brothers and sisters, there are no such boundaries. Okay. I do have a kind of a presentation which I would like to share with you, but I also want to underline the fact that this is only pointers. What I'm sharing today is not a great theological discourse or anything of the kind. It's simply sharing some thoughts, some responses to this whole idea of Fratelli Tutti in a world of interculturality. So here we go. Where am I? Okay. Wait. Yeah. So we're looking at many mansions, and of course we all know the reference. Many in my father's house, there are many mansions, and the idea that there is space for a huge variety of perspectives, of approaches, of naam roop, as we would say in the Indian tradition, with which we approach not just God, but also our living, our interaction with each other, which is ultimately the way in which we actualize our understanding of the divinity and so on, and we make it real for ourselves as well. At the moment, and that becomes very obvious in Fratelli Tutti, there are such opposing value systems, as Father Victor had just pointed out. You start out with this idea of the dark clouds over the closed world. And this is a world where you are preoccupied with the primacy of individual needs and advancement, that I need to get on myself. At the same time, you have a sense of more and more the uniqueness of each culture and each group is being subsumed within this homogenized concept, which is being imposed by either big business or fundamentalist forces and so on. We have competitive, capitalistic, and consumerist forces driving us and making it necessary that we change our cars and change our coffee brand and change our everything. And as Father Victor also pointed out, it is an a world of instant gratification, instant coffee, instant gratification of every need, and a throwaway world as well. So that it's not just the serviette that you're throwing away, paper napkins and paper plates, but people are no longer considered expendable. And it is a world that is power hungry and exploitative. In contrast to that, then kind of more traditional cultural moorings, which are also anchored in certain religious traditions, would be utopia, because they valorize the common good over the individual greed or self-serving. They foster the spiritual evolution of the self and prioritize that over physical gratification. They seek to correct contextualized injustices and inequities rather than freezing them into a particular kind of a structure, and they celebrate uniqueness. At the same time, we have a world where it is not necessarily one, like stream, like the Western idea of a river of progress and getting to one idea which is the ultimate. It's rather a much more cyclical and yet unique, because every high tide and every low tide is different. Every day and night, birth, death, these are cyclical realities that keep circling, that keep coming back, and yet coming back different and new. Fasting, feasting in a rhythm, prosperity, poverty, rejoicing, suffering, these are part of our life and are into that whole way in which religions of different kinds, religious traditions, and our more traditional cultures have not just accepted them, but integrated this cyclic nature into the way in which we live. Okay, so that things are celebrated, which are ordinary everyday things. You celebrate, for instance, in our Indian tradition, most traditions will celebrate the first time that a girl gets her periods. It's actually celebrated, even though we also say you're unclean during that period. But it is celebrated. You celebrate dimensions of this marriage act. You celebrate the first mouthful that the child is going to eat of solid food. You celebrate the day that he is going to be starting his studying. There's so much that we integrate into our ordinary everyday life, into our celebrations. Okay? I'm galloping. And there are also in most of our religious traditions, which are antique, coming down to us from antiquity, certain common strands. They all invite us to transcend our personal desires and sometimes even our personal needs, to control our senses, our sense gratifications. They invite us to be content with less so that we are able to share. Hospitality and welcome are seen as non-negotiable. I mean, when the guest comes to the house, everything is laid out for that guest. If you think about Lot, when the crowd is shouting outside and he's got these guests, these angels indoors, he even offers them, and this as a feminist I resent hugely, but he even offers them his 2 virgin daughters and says, you do what you want with them, but keep my guests safe. And that is, of course, this idea that the hospitality comes before any other commandment, because we are all strangers. And Pope Francis underlines that in that second chapter where he talks about the stranger on the road. Perceiving all life, all beings as being integrally connected. And of course, I don't need to remind you of the way the Isha Upanishad starts, Isha Vasyam Idam Sarvam, that everything is the chosen dwelling place of God, the home of God. Compassion, love, and care being valorized as the ultimate expression of divinity. And again, this becomes like something that spans all religious traditions. So even though they are so different, somehow it is as though in Fratelli Tutti, the Pope is tapping into this energy, which is across these boundaries that we have set up. That this version of reality, of that divinity that I perceive, is the real one. He's also inviting us so strongly to share our resources. And here, once again, over and over again, we're being asked in our religious traditions, in our different cultures, where is that coming from? Is it voluntary? Is it mandatory? Is it from abundance or from need? Are we being wildly generous? Or are we being careful and saying, okay, I want to be generous, but I have to stay alive in order to continue to be generous? So, the almsgiving and sharing of resources is not just charity, but justice. A sharing that goes beyond, oh, I am up here and you are down there, but rather, the story of Karna, that he would never, he was generous of souls, but he never gave like this. He always offered it to the person who was going to take it from him. Wealth seen as a privilege to be held in trust and not taken for granted as a birthright. Again, various forms of community life that have surfaced through the years. We have also socialist and communist ideologies which are at heart drawing on the same understanding that we are connected integrally, and that intimate connection is the space from which we need to act. And most of all, the challenge to rethink the concept of equity and justice. And really what the Pope is inviting us to do is to revision our world. He's inviting us to move from closed societies to an open world so that our different cultures are not opposing our connectedness, are not coming in the way of our reaching out to each other. To find a balance between the local and the universal. In fact, there is one entire section that talks about that, the local and the universal, and how the two are opposing poles and yet have to be held in balance, so that we're walking this little tightrope, as it were. He's inviting us also to revision political systems and power structures, and the way in which not just they are structured, but the purpose from which they function. To rethink the concepts of equity and justice, and to move out of our own cocoons and shells. And he's so understanding, our Pope, because he talks about how very often it's not only the desire for power and the greed for self-serving and so on, but it's also our fear. It's our desperate need to survive, which causes us to create these shells around ourselves. But the invitation is to move out of them, to listen, to understand, to reach out in love. It's such a powerful call, and yet it's written with such understanding and such compassion, so that you have passion, aggression pitted against compassion and care, oppositional divisive forces pitted against empathy and humility, and compassion and care as primary values that perhaps can be enshrined in this praxis. There is, of course, that beautiful image. That beautiful image of the Japanese art form where you have them repairing broken pottery, not in such a way that you can't see the crack, but highlighting the crack by repairing it with gold, so that in fact you are celebrating the value of that thing that was broken, and celebrating the act of bringing it together again, celebrating the reconciliation, not ignoring what was the wound, not forgetting that, but celebrating it. We may never get another such chance, and let us not lose this moment. I want to end with a little story in one verse. So this story is from the time that I was working in the leprosy hospital. This is before I became a nun. And we had this patient whose name was Amiruddin. And Amiruddin was extremely educated, talented, etc. But because of leprosy, he had been driven out of his home and that was now in the hospital and working there. And he had, at this point, he had 600 rupees in cash, he had one transistor radio, and he had one change of clothes. And one night there was a patient came in very late and was admitted. He was going to be treated and all the next day. But that night, he stole Amiruddin's transistor radio and 600 rupees and ran away. And the next day, of course, the superintendent of the hospital was throwing major tantrums and saying, "Oh, look at these people, they're all like that, they all stick together, etc., etc. He will not go." And we were all feeling very bad because we all loved Amiruddin very much. But he will not go and complain to the police. He's refusing to make a police complaint. Then I met Amiruddin and his face was so small, it broke my heart. And I said, "Amiruddin, क्यों नहीं बता रहे हैं पुलिस को?" And I said, "भाई, क्या करें? मैं पुलिस को बता दूंगा, वो पकड़ेंगे उसको और उसको मारेंगे, वो भी तो अपना ही है." He too is one of us. That for me was what forgiveness meant. To lose everything and be able to say about the person who stole it from you, but he too is one of us. I'd like to end with this. What is it we want really? For what end and how? If it is something feasible, obtainable, let us dream it now and pray for a possible land, not of sleepwalkers, not of angry puppets, but where both heart and brain can understand the movement of our fellows, where life is an instrument and none is the bard his natural music, where the waters of life are free of the ice blockade of hunger, and thought is free as the sun, where the altars of sheer profit and sheer power and mere profit have fallen to disuse, where nobody sees the use of buying money and blood at the cost of blood and money, where the individual no longer squandered in self-assertion works with the rest, endowed with the split vision of a juggler and a quick lock of a taxi, where the people are more than a crowd, where in fact the people are my brothers, my sisters. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Dr. Ananda, for this wonderful presentation. Before I move to the third presentation, if you already have questions, you could already send the questions to Santan Fernandez. He is the host at present, so you can find it easily at the participants. Either you can write the questions or you can send a note to him that I want to ask a question to a particular speaker. And the third speaker for the day is Dr. Jose D. Maliekal. He is a Salesian priest holding a doctorate in subaltern fundamental theology from the Department of Christian Studies, School of Philosophy and Religious Studies from the University of Madras. And if I'm not mistaken, he did his doctorate under Dr. Felix Wilfred. He has authored innumerable books, and is at present the principal at St. John's Regional Seminary, Institute of Philosophy, Religious Studies and Social Sciences, Kondadaba, Vizianagaram district in Andhra Pradesh. His areas of research, it includes subaltern perspectives on the production of knowledge, Dalit identities and empowerment, and the impact of religion on socio-economic transformation. ACPI members already know that he was the editor of one of the last collection of the published by ACPI, Philosophies of Transformative Practice, the Social Movements in India, which was published in 2019. And today he will speak to us on social poetry in Fratelli Tutti and Indian reading. Over to you, Father.
Okay, my topic is social poetry in Fratelli Tutti and Indian reading. I was quite fascinated by this one word, social poet, which appeared in Fratelli Tutti. And then when Simon asked me, could you talk on the fifth chapter, I willingly agreed, and without much thought, I gave this title, Social Poetry in Fratelli Tutti and Indian reading. It's a very fine title for us. Then I tried to start it out where exactly I could get some more enlightenment on social poets. Then I found the Pope has already spoken at least on 3 occasions while addressing in 2014, 15 and 16 various groups of people's movements. And he has used that word. And he has told them, you are social poets. Social poets, when he talked about social movements of the farmers, homeless, and migrant workers, whom we have seen also in our own India during the COVID lockdown times, the Bharat under Billy, we have watched them from our own balconies. And 99% of India's workforce is in the formal sector. And social poets is used by Pope against the background of Michel Sarko's, the Jesuit sociologist, anthropologist, idea of everyday semiotics of everyday life, and even linguistic philosophy would come in play. How we play with words, hermeneutics, how reading becomes, understanding becomes a play. And the craftsman who crafts the statue. There is step-by-step movement, dialectics involved. So that way the workers, the poor workers, who are living out their everyday lives, eking out their existence, they are also crafting their life and they have their own agency. They are poets, like poets play with words, giving out a richer meaning of the world. The worker, the laborer also brings out his own life and in the process also transforms reality. And in this context, Pope is very adamant and emphatic that we have to save popular movements from populism, because the corporate world, in nexus with the state itself, sometimes it acts as terrorist, have tried to hijack popular movements by labeling them as populist. We can see in India itself this is happening. And in the process also demonizing the minorities, degrading democracy and its institutions in the name of democracy. As it is happening now. They are safeguarding constitution, they say, in double speak, but they are eroding constitution at macro and micro level. And Pope is very emphatic in a few pages in the 6th chapter. We must defend people as a category. People is an episteme from this populist jargon, especially of the corporate world, which is trying to settle people and put them under their classes. And together with that, the theory of spillover and trickle down theory, which the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and WTO presents as the solution. Somehow the development happens, market takes over, globalization is irreversible, and somehow things should be managed.
Excuse me, Father, are you sharing your presentation already?
Yeah.
But it's not shown. It's okay.
Now, yes. Are you seeing?
No.
Not seeing. I am sharing the screen here.
No, it is not yet come. You can close it and reshare it once further. Or if you want, I can share also.
Okay, stay there.
You can see?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, I'm at this populism and popular movement. So I was telling that Pope is very emphatic that we have to salvage the category of the people and we have to save it from populist tendencies. In fact, corporate world would like to run down on popular movement saying that they are populist, they are working against the nation. Yeah. Next slide, next slide. Yeah, okay. And we have, and Pope is saying, becoming a people is a dynamic and open-ended process. And we have our own constitution, we the people. And we are becoming a people. We have to constitute our constitution every day. And in the present context, we have to have a second freedom struggle for a new politics, where people are listened to their concerns and questions and the consequences of their questions. This is the analysis given by Yogendra Yadav, the political analyst, in 2019, after the BJP government won with a landslide victory. He was analyzing what happened to us. I told my electorate, buttonhole them, don't vote for BJP. They voted for BJP. What could be the reason? We have to analyze. And we have to see the consequences. Why they vote in those patterns. As an expert in social movements would say, Modi cannot be pulled down just simply. The people who support Modi must be swung to your side, the fence sitters and other people. And similarly, our monochrome economic paradigm, which the corporate world in essence with the state or the other way around, is putting it in vogue. We have to have more pluralism in all levels of our social life and economic life. And in that context, Pope is saying social movement is our moral energy that includes the excluded, those who are left out, left behind in building our common destiny. And popular movements and social poetry is about a synergy of the experience of solidarity from below, not power from above. And the farmers' protests in India, environmental activists and climate change activists in India and abroad are cases in point. I have seen. So please look at my pictures also. They are not seemingly cluttering the screen. They are put there as part of my Indian reading. Yeah, Simon, please move the slide. And Pope also stresses the word process. And one element of social poetry is it is a slow movement. Solvers of change, promoters of a process involving millions of actions, great and small, creatively intertwined like the works of a poet. So social poet is coming from that context. In this sense, these movements are social poets that both propose, promote and liberate, facilitating integral human development. Very important point. Social policies made by the government and the state must not only be for the poor, even the work of the voluntary agencies, but with the poor and of the poor, respecting the democratic, cultural, and economic agency of the people. That word agency is very important. In many places, folks says people must not be chained, people must not be tranquilized, people must not be given the free bribes and no, captivated and forced. He is very, very emphatic about it. Yeah. Please change the slide. And social poetry, from what I have said already, is a soul of democracy with a touch and the smell of the daily struggle of the people for dignity and destiny in building their own. So people are the masters. They are builders of their own destiny and architects. Then Pope himself is in the know that in contemporary world there is clear danger of power knowledge being co-opted only by a few countries. The rich countries co-opt power as well as knowledge. There are many ways by intellectual property rights could be one, and even in regarding climate change, what some did we know, leading to cultural imposition or a restriction of basic freedom to weaker nations on the basis of ideological difference. Next slide. But there are people, individuals and collectives, who are opposing this co-opting move, this taming move, this tranquilizing move, anesthetizing move. And there are folks acknowledging them. And we have in our own India, Satyati, Kriti Bharati, Sister Settle Watch, and our Father Stan Swami as icon examples. So many foot soldiers of the Constitution and many young whistleblowers who lay down their lives. Next slide will show some whistleblowers. So Nikita Jacob, Disha Ravi, and the other man. And the strong statement, yeah, if you are thinking I am supporting the farmers with the toolkit and you are putting me in jail, I am better off in jail. Very brave for a girl of 22-year-old. So there are people who are willing to stand up for truth. And this man, another Reddy, Dr. Reddy, IAS, who was still, who was supposed to kill himself. Yeah, there are whistleblowers. And there are other IAS officers from the revenue department who are willing to stand up for a cause. I quote their examples for my seminarians here, more than some cardinals or the popes or the bishops or the priests. These are the living examples I can. Then epistemological shift called for, along with the popular movements, which are expressions of social poetry of the people in the field of knowledge. There is need of a transdisciplinary approach. This has been taken up by Victor himself and sister also indirectly, which bangs on the integration of knowledge. I'll come to this towards the end, from the sixth chapter, and cognitive justice. So North cannot dominate the South on knowledge systems, as if they have a monopoly over truth and knowledge. So I have shown Shiv Vishwanathan, who is very great champion of this, and the Santos, the epistemologists of the South. Yes, please, next slide. Next slide. And there is need of freeing politics from the profit-driven economics and efficiency-driven paradigm of technocratic paradigm. This all of us know. And need to resist the attempts of the state to water down the labor laws in the name of ease of doing business. What is happening in India? Diluting the Forest and Tribal Land Act and the EIA, Economic Impact Assessment. 2016 was a very rigorous one, but it's being watered down now. People's movement, social fight that is stand up to this. And I have given you the labor movement and our just put back the slide. Yeah. Swami Agnivesh. Next slide. Yeah, this is the India. 90% of India, as I told you, is in the informal economy. The Muslim tailor, the Muslim butcher, and many other people. And how demonetization actually killed this, stifled this, The economy that is an integral part of a political, social, cultural, and popular program seeks out different possibilities without stifling human creativity and ideals of progress. And pluralism in economics, in politics, in society is the weapon. And we have seen the anti-CAA protest, NRV in NPR, and people's fight against livelihood. Spelling is mistaken. Livelihood. Yeah, please, next slide. This is Pope quotation that Christians and all human beings for the matter must enter into politics in the right sense of the word. Once more, I appeal for a renewed appreciation of politics as a lofty vocation and one of the highest forms of charity. We speak of social charity, political charity, and politics as a lofty vocation. And for this, my strong point whenever I write about this. Church professes incarnation, but practices downright dualism in action, word, and thought. Church has not overcome it. Pope is there with the migrants across the earlier 60, I think. Then here stands the Adapalli Church in Kerala. They are not estimated correctly. 30 to 50 lakhs, 50 crores. Do we need to spend money so much on the church if you are really believing in incarnation, the carpenter who became human and became slave? The question to be asked in the context of Fratelli Tutti, Laudato Si, and Evangelii Gaudium. We will move the slide. Yeah. Resistance is part of social poetry and social movement. And I'm quoting there David Harvey, the Marxist human geographer. Little pockets of resistance as described by David Harvey against little things. This is hope. In local situations, standing up to an idolatrous system which excludes, debases, and kills. We have to stand against it. This resistance to injustice is also social poetry, as it textures into the everyday lives of the poor. I'm quoting Martin Luther King Jr. Injustice anywhere is a threat to injustice everywhere. It must be justice everywhere. Please. Good politics will seek ways of building communities at every level of social life in order to recalibrate, reorient globalization to make it something with a human face, not globalization of indifference. And globalization is irreversible. That's why social poets are there, to make it. Globalization is not. Globalization is irreversible. Globalization is reversible. The mistake, not irreversible. And IMF, WTO, and World Bank are bad Samaritans. They pretend to be good Samaritans, but they are bad Samaritans. And I'm quoting Felix said, human rights to be interpreted from a deprivational perspective. Otherwise, Tata and Birla and Ananda quote the same human rights. I have the right to occupy land. I have money. I can buy up Nimagiri Hills. I can buy up Panasima. I can buy up the villages of Bengal for starting my car factory, starting my bauxite factory. I can throw them out of work. Social poetry of the popular movement resists, I told you, tranquilization, anesthetization, and changing the poor. And also the functionalistic and privatized mindset, by which people are treated as Victor rightly said, throw away, culture. It involves taking responsibility for those on the margins, those who are being left behind due to the culture of globalized industry. Please change the slide. Slide. Yeah. So the politician must not be worried about the votes, how we got less votes or more votes. But he should be worried about marketing of human organs, human trafficking, sexual exploitation for boys and girls, slave labor, terrorism, and international organized crime. This is the task of the international community. Those who are in politics, not buy up votes not by MLAs, not by MPs to horse trading. And we are still far from a globalization of the most basic of human rights. That's why world politics needs to make effective elimination of hunger. Hunger is another aspect where people are suffering. Hunger is a scandal along with other problems. Please change the slide. Let's not forget hope. The differences are creative. Mr. was just thinking about that. The coincidence of opposites, like Nicholas of Susa would say, they create tension, and in the resolution of the tension lies humanity's progress. So focus in this point. Please, next slide. Yeah. Now I have actually made a surgical strike or incursion into my other chapter. Simon told me to skip on the sixth. But I said naturally this was flowing into the sixth chapter for epistemological foundation. And as wide as the globe or more as the universe, friendship will fought for epistemological shifts. And I gathered together all the epistemological shifts which Pope is calling for. I sent it under one slide. I put 2, 3 more, 5 or 6 or 7 slides together in this. Software for the fine art of encounter. Model from pyramid, the first one, to polyhedron or rhizoid and round tube. I use all these words in my epistemology class with the brother. They are very, very familiar. You sleep, you wake them up, they will say all this. So which are these? This is the software component. Tolerance. So 1 minute. Tolerance, pluralism, celebration of differences, even love jihad. The states one after the other, BJP rule states are competing with each other. And Kerala bishops hierarchy are buying into the propaganda of the Sangh Parivar. So there is love jihad as a reality. And we need to have Panicarian mutual fecundation, diatopical hermeneutics, or even multi-topical hermeneutics. Filling our hearts with phrases and names, flesh and blood, not people as statistics, big data, and they are manipulated. So I'm calling for a Venetian posture towards reality, towards other dimensions. And the ability to see from the margins as a poor would see reality. The professional objectivity for the poor. These are the epistemological toolkits. We must make a toolkit to make Laudato Si as well as Fratelli Tutti into practice. Put it into practice. So now I would like to listen, all of us together listen to D'Souza, what he has to tell us, young and old, more young or more old than the young.
So people who run businesses, who have incomes, who have careers, who have reputation, who have something to lose or something to protect are silent right now. The biggest male voices in Bollywood are conspicuous in their absence and their silence because they have these big projects riding on their very buff arms and shoulders, right? Also, they make so much more money than the women, so they have so much more to lose. Corporate India is so afraid to tick off the government, they're worried their files might not move through North Block and they will be punished into not making as much money as they're used to, so they're completely silent. So our streets right now are littered with human rights violations, with attempts to change the fabric of this secular country. Our streets right now are full of crime, and the people who have access to education and information and communication and platforms have covered those streets with a blanket of silence. When they came for Kashmir, there was silence. They came for Assam, there was silence. They came for Jamia, there was silence. They came for Uttar Pradesh, there was silence. They came for JNU, there was silence. Too much to protect, right? Too much to lose. Yes, uncle, I understand. That is true. Middle class people, why take panga now? We're middle class. Yes, I understand. That is true. So what about those people who are standing up right now? Kannan Gopinath, Kanhaiya Kumar, Varun Grover, Swara Bastard, Zishan Ayub, Deepika Padukone, Farhan Akhtar, Sandhya Mridul, Shah Faisal, who's still in custody. Shaila Rashid, don't these people have families to protect? Don't they have careers? Don't they have income? Do they have nothing to lose? Lakhs and lakhs of students in universities across the country, what do they have to lose? They have everything to lose. They have our identity to lose. Our identity as a secular democratic republic. Our Mile Sur Mera Tumhara identity, they have that to lose. That's more important than an income, or a career, or a reputation, or safety. I know if you forward something, it becomes permanent. They're reading everything, they're tracking everybody. Everything. Is the government reading the Constitution? Are you reading the Constitution, Uncle? You know, we don't own this Constitution. We don't own this country. It's not ours to squander. We are custodians of it for the next generation.
Simon, you can stop it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Father, for the wonderful presentation. And over to you, Santan, to moderate the session of the question answers.
Good evening, everyone. Firstly, thank you to all the speakers for their presentations. Very illuminating and enlightening. And of course, it helped, I'm sure it helped all of us to get new perspectives on what Fratelli Tutti and Pope Francis is speaking to all of us. This moderator session will be curtailed by some time. So in case any of you have any questions, please put them in the chat and we will try to address them. I will begin first with a clarification requested by Father Stanislas, and I would like to refer this to Father Victor. Father Victor, Father Stanislas asks about Hannah Arendt having an interesting point about fraternity. She says that fraternity is a form of humanity that is typical of persecuted people. Would you like to comment? Because Father Stanislas says this is hardly the universal emotion for all times and places.
I accept this idea. She talks about the unchosen people. I like this term, the unchosen people, because we are so much chosen and chosen people all the time, and this theologizing of being accepted by God and others are not accepted. So she, being a Jew, has brought this idea, that we are unchosen and I belong to the unchosen people. That's what she would say, and that's where the fraternity can expand and embrace much larger than the idea of a chosen people. And what we have in the letter, the nobody, people who are nobody, they are unchosen. Nobody is choosing them, not even God, theologically, if you ask me. So that, God really does it, but when we use the term unchosen, I believe we are embracing what Pope is trying to say, embrace the noble. I'm trying to take it forward. I'm not rejecting what he's saying.
Thank you, Father Victor. Thank you. Next, we have a question for Father Jose by Simon Dhar. Simon, would you want to ask the question? Simon Dhar? Okay. In the meantime, we can move to the next question. The next question comes from Brother Anish. Brother Anish, would you like to ask your question?
Yes. This question is to, I think, both Father Jose and Father Victor. Since both of you are in seminaries, and Father Jose, you spoke about social poetry and especially in the Indian reading.
Yeah.
My question is, as Christian philosophers, first and foremost, how is this kind of a poetry arising in our institutions, or this kind of a feeling or an attitude that is arising in having this kind of a sense of fraternity with those who are protesting in our country. That is first. And second is something related to what the video of Faye D'Souza, in the sense, see, in order to have any kind of fraternity, we on a personal level need to transcend a sense of fear of my own security or my own security being lost, right? So there is always that fear that holds me back from uh, kind of identifying with someone who is either suffering or protesting to a power that can harm me or any sense of security that I have. So how do we in our institutions cultivate through reflection or whatever to be able to transcend that sense of fear so that we could identify, and maybe some kind of poetry will arise out of our context. So yeah, thank you so much.
Okay. Shall I answer it? Okay. I think, at least in my seminary, autobiographically, I had gone. I was the only Christian human being in the GVMC grounds of Vizag, along with the notion of Muslim brothers protesting against this CAA. Democracy is designed with Gandhi's picture, scrap CAA and Ninazi with Nehru's picture, and Ambedkar's picture, human first and citizens next. So we had to start somewhere. The immersion processes which were in vogue in the 70s and 80s perhaps, we should give a taste for brothers of the reality outside the seminary. Now it's high time that we restarted those processes or we pushed ourselves into this. So we had to start. There is no saying that now I will stay back. The first question they will ask is FPRN number. My FPRN number will be frozen. Now we have to be ready for it. So they cannot profess and have a foe making impact. Laudato Si. Laudato Si is planting trees. Fratelli Tutti is okay, maybe, I don't know, something. So we have the way of taming the tiger into a pussycat. This is our method. Somehow we have to make a start. I understand there are some contradictions involved in this. I think we have to push ourselves into this. I am trying to push myself. Perhaps also get out of the seminary after being for 35 years into this business of farming. If it is to a saturation point, then I must move on to action myself. This is with all the contradictions and ambiguities myself there. Thank you.
Father Victor, would you also like to respond?
I think we need a new paradigm, just like we need to embrace a new way of being humans in the world. If you ask me, the Pope is asking us to renew all relationships, structures that form humans and our society. And so, in the light of this document, it is important that we also relook at our certainties in formation. We are very much certain about things like everyday morning prayer, everyday getting up and going for mass, and things of this nature, much religious. You see, my thinking is conditioned by Zizek's thinking, where once he went to a coffee shop asking for coffee without cream, and the waiter told him, "I don't have coffee without cream, but I will give you coffee without milk." But what is that difference? It is the same thing, but we call it different. We all are sitting there for mass, and each one is drinking his own coffee in different ways. And so the uniformity of rituality that we are all the time doing perhaps need revision and find out how we can become more loving, caring, and bring the Eucharist on the altar of our life. And that's where the challenge is. The challenge is not just being faithful, visible to prayer life. I feel that is where we diocesans have to lead, because we are not religious and we are not monks. Unfortunately, in our seminaries of diocesan seminaries, very often my own, we have given the religious spirituality the highest place. And so somehow we belong to the poetry that he's trying to say, rather than, we need to be part of the people's life, part of people's process, and that's how we need to make. Even Canon Law says, my spirituality is by giving pastoral care to the people. I become saint only by pastoral care, by being part of this movement of poetry, change, protest, resistance. And so we need a paradigm shift. I must say, I can't say more than this.
Thank you, Father Victor. Thank you, Father Jose. The next question I would like to present to Sister Ananda. This question comes from Roy. Uh, he asks, being a Christian and most importantly, being a human person, I say a big yes to other religions and embrace them as my brothers and sisters. However, I receive a big no. In such a situation, what should I do? How do I move in acceptance? Is forgiveness and fraternal acceptance the only way forward for us?
I think perhaps one of the most important things is to listen, to be able to listen to each other. And obviously, you can't force somebody else to listen to you. But the only way that I can even begin to imagine that the bridging of the gap can happen is if at least one side is listening, is responding, having listened. Communication and listening are the only keys to this possibility of moving forward. You know?
Thank you, sister. Thank you, sister. I hope that helps direct Roy in the way forward.
Yes.
Uh,
Thank you.
I would like to ask a question to Father Victor. Uh, Father Victor, you spoke of uh, frat- borderless fraternity. I would like to know how do we achieve it in a situation, the global situation that we are in. How do we move forward and achieve this borderless fraternity?
See, I have not spoken it. The Pope is speaking about this borderless fraternity, and he also gives us a hope and a way. And he seems to suggest that politics has to change. The way politics is right now happening is politics of hate, politics of whatever advantage that I want to take from the other route. All kinds of things are happening right now, and populism is ruling the roost. And so we need to, bring in what he calls social political love or charity, which means I must identify with the weakest of the persons or helpless people. They are, for him, politicians are should not be set, should not be kept out. They are important players because many things I will do only charity. I will help one person, but they are breach builders. They are breach. This the term is used so that politicians can introduce structures, laws. They can. I can give food for one day. Politician can feed people for a long time through job creation, through other structures too. So health, education, all these are important. So we cannot disown politicians, but we need change. One of the critique of this letter is from others where I read is there is less on change of heart. The Pope is not focusing on the conversion. Uh, Maybe it is why because this letter is addressed not to Christians alone. It is addressed. There are two letters that the Pope has not addressed to anyone. The two letters. One is Laudato Si and this letter. Otherwise, letters are addressed to at least people of goodwill. Here, everyone is embraced. You see, not even those who reject our letters are also part of this audience. And so, in that sense, it is this letter itself borderless. The Pope is trying to do this, and at the same time, this one problem of politics. Another problem our Pope is presenting is the world is becoming more and more closed. Echo chambers are around, and so we need dialogue. We need to cultivate dialogue. And he somehow even says religion is at the service of dialogue so that everyone lives in harmony. And so even the church has promoted this. So this way, I believe, what borderless, being on the border is a very powerful image. Being on the border, both sides. Jesus was on the border. If you ask me, between humanity and divinity, and we need to be there, being human and divine. The church is always on the border, but unfortunately we have lost the border and we are in the center. And we need to identify the borders and become more and more border crossing people. That's why we will be borderless. The moment we start crossing borders, we are borderless. That's what I want to say.
Thank you for the response. Pope Francis says we have to go to the peripheries. I think so. That is where we are called to be rather than the center. Uh, I think we are just about out of time. Would there be any other question from any of the participants? A last call for any questions? Okay. I think we can move ahead. Okay, there is one query from
Stanislav. I'll
Father
just put the
Stanislav.
question myself if it's possible.
Uh,
Yeah,
Yes, Father, please go on.
this is something similar to the question that I asked before. See, we are living in closed little circles of fraternity, okay? And this is our reality today, day-to-day life, okay? I think the Holy Father is asking us to break these little worlds and then, enter into a borderless fraternity, which is very beautiful. But even as believing people, we find it difficult to break out of this little circle, okay? Now, are we now asking for, are we dreaming of, are we hoping for something really impossible? Is it something, an impossibility that we are, let's say, looking for? This is my question to all the three of them. And I do not know. I'm not saying that it is, there are signs of it. I know there are signs of it, but I think it looks as if like an impossibility. That's why I just wanted to put this question to you. Actually, we are almost like a monads, but let's say group monads, not let's say, and then to come out of this windowless, monads, to embrace the world without borders. Are we talking something, let us say, feasible and possible? Over to you.
Sister, would you like to begin with the response to this query?
Okay, I just wanted to say that unless we think of and hope for and work for the impossible, even what is possible will not be achieved. So I'm all for believing in working for and believing in and hoping to achieve the impossible.
Thank you, Sister. Father Jose?
Yeah, I would like to take off from the angle of practice as Marx would push us on. The practice is the testing ground of theory. And as Ricker would rightly tell us, the action is not the resolution of the floundering reflection. There is no end to reflection. I should start acting. Either somebody should put us out, Modi should put us out practically, or the Pope is encouraging us from Rome, or Amit Shah should put us out. So I see a non-silver lining in all that is happening around. That sometimes we are in our cocoons, as Stanislav is trying to say. Somebody should force us to break the cocoon, and we will be out. I think this is my hope. Nobody is so evil as not to do some good for us. And we are now in the inscrutable ways of divine providence, that how we will be pushed out into the Khandia, beyond the Khandia perhaps. So let us hope. Hope is a theological virtue, which also comes into practice here.
Thank you, Father Jose. Thank you, Sister. I think we can close our interaction for this
You want
evening.
me to
And
say something or finish it off?
Father,
The question is for all
okay,
three guys.
Father,
No? So I thought,
okay.
what I was trying to think when the question was raised, I think the Pope is inaugurating an horizon for us, which is possible, but we will have to be critical and make certain discernments. Why? Because the language of borderless world is also the language of neoliberal economy, and the politics that actually accompanies this neoliberal economy is one that closes the world. So there is a paradox in this, because we feel rootless and then we want to look for our roots. Cultural roots becomes those roots, religious roots becomes, and so we find belonging together while hating others. The enemy starts from being existing from within. And so I think we need a lot to think, because the way economy is organized through neoliberal policies will not give us a borderless world that we are looking for. Because it is a borderless economy which divides, and the world into cocoons or isolated whatever islands that we may now exist. So we need an alternative economical model that will embrace everyone. And I feel we are at the right time, because when we look at the COVID pandemic, the poor cannot be forgotten. The powerless cannot be set aside. You have to save the poor to save yourself. And so there is a kind of borderlessness here, where earlier hospitals were meant only for the rich and the powerful. Today we have to open everything for everyone. And so we have been found wanting for some time, because all our structures were economically driven, and therefore there were no beds for all. Why? The rich man has to be given the bed. And so this is how it was. So I feel the disruption that we experience is also disrupting economic models that were playing. And hope, this is the only word that I can have. God will sow some seeds so that we become more and more human. And we too have to read the signs of the time and seeds sown by God and take them as social poets forward.
Thank you, Father. Uh, so, so as we are closing our interaction for this evening, I now invite Father Satyabalan for the to give a note of appreciation to all.
Thank you, Santan. Dear friends, we have come to the end of our program. I'm here to propose the word of thanks. I am Father Satyabalan from Satya Nilayam, a Jesuit philosophy in Chennai. Indeed, it was a good occasion for all of us, the ACPI members and the friends and well-wishers of ACPI, to come together during this pandemic. I am filled with gratitude for this wonderful evening. First and foremost, I thank the Almighty God for His blessings upon each one of us and His constant accompaniment to make this occasion possible for all of us. My profound thanks to Father Keith D'Souza, the ACPI President, and the governing body of ACPI for giving the youngsters this wonderful opportunity to organize this webinar. Father Keith guided us and made some timely interventions in the time of preparation and made sure that all would go well. Thank you, dear Father, for all that you have been to us. I would like to express my sincere thanks to all the resource persons, Sister Ananda, Amritmahal, Father Victor Ferrao, and Father Maliekal, for having accepted our invitation to be the resource persons for this evening webinar. You have enriched us with your talks and interaction with us. I wish to thank all the members of ACPI and all the friends, well-wishers of ACPI who have taken their time off to attend this webinar. My special thanks to the seminarians who are attending from various or different parts of the country. All your interactions and discussions made this webinar a memorable one. Thank you very much. We hope that by October 2021, the COVID-19 would slow down and we are able to meet in person in Mumbai for the annual ACPI seminar. Until then, stay safe and stay blessed. Have a nice evening. Thank you, one and all.